like if Johnny Carson, when we watched him, had, you know, 4 million like late night shows that people had that they, you know, maybe only 500 watched this one and 1,000 watched this one, but his rating cumulatively, all those tiny ants sucking a little bit away, would have left him not with 17 million, which he had at his height, but, you know, something much more modest. That's the problem with so many podcasts.
No.
Why?
First of all, you're doing the thing that you hate the most, which is moving people around in chronology. If Johnny Carson was, forget that. We're here now.
I mean, as great as he was, he would not survive today. He was just, that show breathed way too much for the current audience. Right, I know. Yes,
Who cares? The world wouldn't make him today.
Wanting to, you know, do this like what if scenario when it comes to playing things out, especially when it comes to our culture today, in Hollywood and elsewhere, especially, you know, on the heels of that long, what was it, like 5-6 month long strike, the Writers Guild, as well as the Actors Guild, which was, you know, one of the longest strikes in Hollywood history, at least recent history. So that was a big deal, and, you know, it kind of woke people up to the fact of what is the industry to do about all of these new developments, let us say, or identities or labels, to create characters that are promoting of all different backgrounds, whether we're talking people from a queer, bisexual, you know, LGBTQIA background, trans, and anything else. But these spaces require us to ask certain questions, and one of the questions is what's appropriate, what is actually allowable on television or elsewhere. So it's one of the reasons why YouTube, I think, is such an amazing platform, because I think for the most part YouTube allows for practice of free speech and expression, and if you don't agree with what somebody says, that's okay. You can choose not to watch, you can choose to comment and still engage, you can, you know, it's all sorts of things, but to me it creates a dialogue as opposed to shutting conversation down and canceling and being part of this whole cancel culture that's just total nonsense. But the idea here is Johnny Carson would not have existed now because there wouldn't have been a space for that, and it doesn't really matter because it's irrelevant. But, you know, Bill is interesting because I think he talks a lot about looking forward, which I believe is true. He probably does as far as himself, his career, you know, his show Real Time, but he probably looks back a lot too. In fact, what he was about to do before I cut it off was get into an old newspaper clipping of you know, a headline questioning whether Johnny Carson should leave NBC, should leave the show. Is this idea of chronology, and yeah, it's kind of like, why even bother going there? But I think to make the point that it's like, well, yeah, we do have a reason to go back in time, at least in our heads. It's like sometimes we think that we're finished with the past, and yet, oh, you know, a memory comes up as we're taking a shower one morning or something like that, and you're just like, oh, I remember that time with that person. Oh, and I could have done right. I could have gotten that gig there, which would, and you never know what possibilities or what doors might open for you had you done X, Y, or Z 22 years ago. But bottom line is it don't matter because we're not back in time. People are walking on eggshells these days. They're on their little tippy toes, so careful to not offend the snowflake in the other room that can't handle a joke that, you know, again, to bring relevance to chronology, sure, yeah, 40, 50 years ago that would have been tolerated, not just tolerated, but accepted, promoted, and widely laughed at. And now these jokes, they're looked at, and like Jerry says, you're gonna write a joke and you're gonna say, okay, here we go. But that now it gets passed on. Oh, now it's in the hands of your producer. Oh, and now his assistant, and then that person's, assistant or whatever. Now they've got eyes on it, they've got hands on it. Well, as soon as that happens, you're done. The comedy is over. Why would you want to starve an audience of potential laughter when, after all, laughter is the best medicine? Thank you, and good night.